The Gospel of the Lord. As you know, for the last little while, we've been looking at some of the complex moral questions around modern medicines that have been implicated by contact in the abortion industry. Many of the modern vaccines for children have been tested on aborted fetal cell lines that have been purchased by pharmaceutical companies and then immortalized. It's a special process. I don't understand it. I'm not a biologist or a microbiologist and certainly not a doctor, but they do a special process that those cells that they have purchased from an aborted fetus, from an institution that has performed an abortion, they do a special procedure on those cells so that they'll last a long time and they can continue to use them when they test other medicines on them to see how the cells will react, to get some idea of the safety and the efficacy of the vaccines and the medicines. And of course, we all know the big debate last year because most of the COVID vaccines were tested in that way. And that is one important distinction that we need to be aware of, that most, if not almost all, the COVID vaccines did not contain any molecular biological material from aborted fetuses, because that was often a lot of the rhetoric and information that was being passed around, often not so well informed on those matters last year. And there, most of the implication that those vaccines had was through testing. Normally, at the end of the fabrication process, a certain batch of the vaccines would be tested on those immortalized cell lines. And of course, that raised all the dilemma, or the moral stress for Catholics of goodwill as to whether they could take them. And remember that that question had been answered previously by the Vatican informal documents and previous papacies under Benedict XVI especially, when it looked at the vaccines for children for mumps, rubella, measles, and said that the chain of causality was remote enough, far enough away from the actual evil of the abortion itself, then the procurement of the cells, and then the way that they're used in the fabrication of the vaccines by testing, that a Catholic at the very end of that chain could indeed use such a vaccine without having any sinful cooperation, because it was what we call remote, mediate, material cooperation in evil. Still something undesirable, of course. No one is saying that this is a small matter. No one is saying that abortion is only a minor sin. This is a horrendous industry of abortion, and even more horrendous is the purchasing of baby parts for then use in other medicines. And of course, as Catholics, if we had another option, we would certainly go down that route of using an untainted medicine. But in the face of an emergency, or in the face of needs, medical needs, we then accept, when we have no other option, that we would use such a medicine. And in the recent few homilies I've done on this, I've showed that even in ordinary life, not just when there's an emergency need, or some sort of critical need like a pandemic, we are in this kind of cooperation in evil every day by our ordinary transactions, paying our taxes, any kind of implication with businesses that are involved in intrinsic evil like the pharmacies, even now the supermarket chains, the gasoline companies, the banking industries, because in one way or another they're implicated in abortion through this kind of chain of connectivity, in the rainbow soup push, which is all the homosexual, transgender ideologies. A lot of companies now have got the green tick and are funding in one way or another those things, as well as pornography. We're enmeshed in the world, and we can't seem to remove ourselves from this remote cooperation. And the reason I'm saying all of this is to give people a certain peace of conscience that they were not sinning in any way if if they had taken the vaccine or any other vaccines or used other medicines, because there are many of them that have been tested on these immortalized aborted fetal cell lines. And this is where, on the point that I'm about to make, there has been a lot of debate, and we're not quite sure. So what I'm about to say is a knowledge that doesn't have exact certitude. But what seems to be reliable from the information that I have been able to obtain from good bioethicists in the church, priests who their specialization are these topics and these researchers, when they have taken these immortalized fetal cell lines, it seems to me mainly from some abortions that happened in the 1970s. So there does not seem to be abortions that happened last week and the purchase of baby parts for the immortalized cell lines to be made recently. And the reason for that is that they have found that the immortalized cell lines that they made from the aborted fetal tissue from the 1970s is very reliable. It's like a trustworthy workhorse that they use time and time again when it comes to this kind of testing. So it was the evil of abortion that happened a number of decades ago, and then they have used these in a repeated fashion, these immortalized cell lines. Now, we would all be horrified and we would be willing to be corrected if there was reliable information to the contrary that came out that showed that they were continuing to purchase and immortalize these cell lines in recent times, of course, and that would require an adjustment of the moral calculus that we enter into. But even so, it would still be probably and most likely a remote material cooperation and still acceptable within a Catholic weighing up that goes on, the moral taxonomy as it's called, and working out the goods to be achieved, the evils to be tolerated within the principle of double effect. But there, my brothers and sisters, we have to make sure that we have a Catholic mind on these things, because last year there was lots of misinformation around this, lots of alarm, and then that alarm was bending into a kind of hysteria on the topic, and many people were then, fearing that they had somehow committed immortal sin by taking the vaccine, when really every day of our life today, in the current times, we are cooperating in a remote, immediate, material way in so many intrinsic evils that we cannot remove from our daily life. And this saddens us as Catholics. And every now and again, there should be a prophetic pushback when it's found that Disney, the famous entertainment company, is making so many of their programs now to push the transgender ideology. Yes, I think it's right and just that a Catholic would say, I end my subscription, or Netflix or PayPal or many of these other companies that we don't have to work with. They're just entertainment providers. And it would have been good, I think, just my personal opinion, if the Holy Father had stood prophetically last year and said, when the vaccines were being developed, made a call on the pharmaceutical companies and said, 1 billion Catholics are not going to use your vaccines if they are tainted in this way. And we want to send a prophetic message to you. We are horrified by this activity. Give us a vaccine that's clean and well tested, well proven, and then we will endorse it for the Catholic Church and for Catholics around the world. That may have been a prophetic stance that we could have taken. And then many bishops, many laity would have followed in behind, because there was a clear ring of the trumpet from the leader to lead us into a true path. Yes, that would have been probably a good thing. Didn't happen, of course, and then we have to navigate as to where and how can we cooperate, what is legitimate, what is acceptable, what is tolerable in the face of these troubles and trials. So let us, my brothers and sisters, be clear on these things. And if you have any other questions, go back, look at the other homilies that I've given over the last sort of 13 to 14 days, building up to show the Catholic position as best as we can on these things in the modern times. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.